Welkom beste mensen met een nieuw seizoen bij Eemland on the Move. En wij beginnen gelijk met een best wel een primeur, want we hebben zomaar Gareth en last name being the GG.
Gilbert.
Gilbert. Great to have you.
Not any relation to the rugby ball or the equipment, unfortunately.
Great to have you here. It's a bit of a spectacular move. I mean, we know each other a little bit indeed from the nationals and your times at Gooi. But now you're with Eemland. So how did that come about?
Well, look, first of all, I think, working at Gooi, being part of that club for the last 20-odd years, fantastic club, fantastic people, a great adventure or great journey that I've had there.
And you finished on top.
Yeah, and finished on top. Great people. Also, that's where it started for me in Dutch rugby. It's definitely seen as my home in the sense of, so mad respect for Gooi and what they did for me. But yeah, it comes a time where, different challenges arise and, obviously Gooi are moving in a direction with some younger coaches and, for me, it was a chance to maybe see something else in terms of a different role. Mm-hmm. And Eemland, meeting with Michiel and having a conversation, and there was a lot of things that really interested me about this, about the club. Really exciting, and it's really looking forward to getting involved.
Cool, that's good. No, indeed, but just for my education, I think you also were national coach, right?
Yeah, correct.
But you did not combine that with Gooi, or you did?
No. I was the technical director of the union and the national coach. That was when we had that massive financial crisis in Rugby Netherlands, and I had to do a dual role. So I was national coach and technical director.
So it was about efficiency too.
Yeah, well, it was basically. But I mean, I learned so much. Great opportunity, experience, but also, for me, it was an eye-opening experience, but also I learned so much.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah, suddenly you've got a much broader scope, obviously, than just the club, and you do a lot of things, and that makes sense. Well, now you're also still doing the under-20s, right?
And the ladies team. Staying involved in the pathway. I think it's really important. Being involved in the Dutch rugby pathway is really motivating. It's also, so much talent in this country, and, being involved and upskilling and, contributing to the orange shirt is so important.
It is, yeah. Well, I think we're on the verge of a very important pathway we can go up, but we could also, all the good work that we've done, I really hope that we're going forward. And
I think the strength of the Dutch sort of system is that, the resilience of Dutch people, especially, when it comes to, if you think about it, most of the players are, funding themselves and, or parents are funding their kids. It is a pretty unique sort of way. Yeah, you know what that feels. Yeah. It is a sort of unique way. Is it ideal? I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, there has to be more investment, but I think the resilience of the Dutch rugby sort of people and pathway is something that's always really been astonishing. And if we can get the right sort of investment and the right balance, I think then we'll make that big step. I think at the moment, regardless of what's happening at the union, I think the Dutch, in the terms of the pathway, it's really set up well. So, I think I'm not too worried about going backwards. I think for me, it's more about, getting the right strategy or people in place to make sure that we go forwards. I think there's a lot of good people in Dutch rugby that are doing a lot of good work, and I'd rather focus on that.
No, makes sense. And well, to my point, and therefore we're also having this conversation. What you see is but it's a personal one. What is a pity, a lot of clubs are really investing, right, at Gooi, but also Haagse, Dukes, and here in Eemland. So there you see a certain structure, and people are thinking slightly more long term. And again, if we get confronted with Rugby Netherlands or Rugby NL, it sometimes seems to be more difficult, at least to maintain or put in place. And you something we're getting there, and then it suddenly drops off.
Look, I think it's way more difficult for a union than a club. A club, everyone loves the club and everyone's involved in it, and you get all the small businesses in your area involved, and if you have a strong business club, it's a lot more difficult on a national level.
Yeah.
And I think I think off-field is where the biggest sort of progression needs to happen, rather than on-field. On-field, I think if you look at what certain coaches have done in the past, like Lynn Jones, guys like that have really, have helped us take that next step. Yeah, okay, sure, the Belgium game didn't go according to plan. No. Okay, that was massive disappointment. We can all agree on that. But I think in general, if you look at, how the pathway has been able to consistently, producing players at a decent level, I don't think we're far off from making that step. But however, I think if you look off the field, I think that's where the clubs are maybe a little bit more stronger than what's going on, and I think that's where clubs have it maybe a little bit more in order in terms of, it being smaller and more focused on certain things that they have more control of. So, look, there's a lot of elements that we can discuss about Dutch rugby, but I think
we won't do that. No, just an observation, but getting to a structure, and that's one of the reasons. So, as you said at the beginning, you had conversation with Michiel. There was a challenge presented. What is the challenge that you look forward to, and well, look, I think what's really impressed me about Eemland is it's a club that since coming into the Era class is consistently climbing. If it's off field, on field, this club. If you think about it, and I don't want to offend anyone. It's a relatively young club when it comes. No, of course, 77. Yeah, I had the founder here too.
I think one of the great things about Gooi was that they were consistently in the top 4 of the Era class for a very long time.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of good base, there. And
it's rugby royalty.
Yeah. But I think Eemland, for me, what was great, talking to Michiel and hearing, and also speaking to Zane Gardner, speaking with Mitch, obviously working with Mitch.
Yeah.
Understanding a bit more about Eemland and the challenge. And I think for me, coming in as the director of rugby, the focus is going to be more for me is about taking the club into the next sort of step of towards performance. And I think if you look at something that really excites me at Eemland is just the medical structure, with Liam Padgett. I think, what we've been able to do there and what we're going to do is really it.
With the mouth protectors.
Yeah, well, not only that, I think the way that we want to set things up here is really exciting. I look at the coaches that are coaching here. There's a lot of opportunity. Good coaches here, to introduce a good sort of continuous personal development sort of program where coaches are able to grow. If you look at the youth at Eemland, you've basically got 2 teams per age group now. In the Cubs, you've got 3.
That's the first. So
the club's growing, and there's a nice base to work on. There's a lot of opportunity to. I think if we can get the right, and I think what's really important is getting involved in Eemland. It's a completely different challenge to what I had at Gooi. At Gooi, I was on field and off field. Here, it's not so much on field. It's more, support for the coaches. But obviously, for me, the biggest thing is culture and leadership within the club and building a structure with the current members of the club that's going to, help take Eemland into the next level, but also create a sort of legacy. That's something that, when your time's up here, that it continues, that the club keeps growing, and the club in terms of based on values rather than, winning cups.
Yeah.
I think that's what really excited me to get involved in that, to be part of that. And I think, like I said to Michiel, my first, sort of order of business is to first understand where we're at as a club. And that, we call it the first 90 days of, okay, what does that look like? Observing, how things are going, meeting with different stakeholders, from parents to volunteers to coaches to board members, to understand what is the identity of Eemland. What is that identity? And then from there, it's about, putting a plan together of, okay, a long-term plan of, okay, this is what it's going to take to build a culture here at the club that is...
a high-performance culture.
Yeah, well, I think develop the culture even more than what it is at the moment. And, once you get in here, you start to see the passion in people's eyes.
Yeah. I've been at several clubs now. Well, not several, but a little bit around. And indeed, it's the commitment that people have at this club towards the club. And you see a strong core of people that really want to support this club in any way, shape, or form, and doing a lot to maintain that. That's indeed that's very. that feels more like family-like, funny enough, than anything else. I haven't seen that in other clubs, for instance. Well, I've been at USA. Stichts is a different story, but that's a new club that really was developed out of a passion, came forth out of the rugby Utrecht students. So that's different. So that's indeed. And you are aware of the possibilities of that extra field and a new clubhouse.
Well, that's all the sort of stuff that I still need to all find out. I think, and I think that's another thing that excites me here is that I think the opportunity, but also the ambition and the drive that when you speak to people about how they want to grow the club and where they want to go, I think if we want to take rugby in the Netherlands to another level, we need clubs like Eemland, HRC, the Dukes, Gooi, that are pushing the envelope to continue to keep pushing the envelope. And I think,
what is it that you feel that is necessary to do that? What does a club need to do to get there, or push that envelope, or to get to the next level?
Well, I mean, look, I think the biggest thing is obviously you need decent numbers. You need decent numbers. You can't, but it's not the biggest and the most important thing. But I think the facilities obviously need to be up to standard in the sense of making sure players have the opportunity to develop. Obviously, for me, coaching is massive. If you want to have long-term success, you need to have a strong coaching pathway within your club that helps develop the parent that wants to get involved, but also inspires young players that finish to get back into the game, stay in the game, get involved in coaching or refereeing or volunteering or the medical side of things. Very, very important that you have pathways that stimulate staying in the game. Yeah. So I think for me, that's something where I think we lose a lot of people in club rugby, that just either stop playing, but then you don't see them again.
No.
You might see them here for a beer or something like that, but I think it's easier said than done, but I think if we can get that, then that it makes a big difference. With coaching, really, really important, and player welfare. I think, player welfare in terms of not making it softer for players. Don't get me wrong when I talk about player welfare, but, we are playing a very physical sport.
Yeah.
Where parents, if you want the sport to grow, you have to also look after the player. You need to have sufficient medical supplies. You need to have experienced medical people that are dealing with your players. Yeah. And I think that's something that really excites me about the club here, is that's taken, really, really seriously under him. And, obviously I know Liam, I've coached Liam. I've played with Liam. Yeah. So really excited to work with him again. And then the last thing is competition. And I think, if we want the game to grow in the country, the competition needs to become, how would I say, it needs to be exciting. It needs to become a product that you can sell. Yeah. So for me, it's how do we improve the brand to something that people want to walk in here and invest.
And what do you think that's necessary for that, to improve the brand? What is it that we're not getting out there?
How long do you have?
No, I know, but obviously certain, bullet points, 1, 2, 3. I mean, there are many more probably, but... Yeah.
Well, look, I think people don't want to see games that are won
and by the way, you're allowed to come back to explain, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think, people don't want to see games that are won by 70 points.
No.
Anything over 40, 50 points, it doesn't really interest, and you can see that, right? Yeah. What people want is like the semi-final Rotterdam Eemland with a couple of points. The semi-final Gooi here the last year. Broken heart. But that's what people want to see. That's the level of game. And if you can create that sort of game, week in and week out.
Really competitive.
But I also understand the point of view, and this is the discussion that we need to have in terms of understanding the famous word baar-omzet. Baar-omzet, you need more games. You need more games. Okay. But that needs to be looked at in the sense of, do we need more games, or do we need to do better in terms of getting people down to the game, getting people investing in the game? So I think if we can look at all the sort of areas around the player and around the club and what's needed in terms of it taking the next step, then I think you start to see, people taking it a little bit more seriously. I mean, we train twice a week. Yeah. Can you call that top sport? I don't know. That's an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I know, and I've been close to that in other sports, kickboxing and judo. It's not enough, really. You really need to do a little bit more.
Yeah, but I think also there we have to then also provide the opportunity and the facilities, and that's where I think
that's chicken and egg discussion.
Yeah, but that's what really excites me about this project and this challenge. Working here at Eemland is it's about, okay, how do we take that next step? I think for me it's a great opportunity to gain a lot of valuable experience in trying to find what that solution is and find out how we can do that. And I mean, I've been involved in Dutch rugby for quite a while. And
how long? Yeah, how long is that now?
That's about 20 odd years.
Wow.
Yeah. So
so what you're saying is you age more gracefully than I do. What's this? What?
I don't know about the patch on the side of my head, but yeah. No,
that's an interesting. Sorry to get back. Sometimes my mind races all over the place. So you've got now 20 odd years experience. So you started 20 years ago, or more than that, and we're 20 years gone. What can you see as biggest difference then and now, where we are? What has happened?
I mean, geez, in those days you talk about numbers. The game has grown, quite a lot.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the level of the game, absolutely.
Yeah.
The level of the player and the skill of the player. I think the academy's pathway has been massive in terms of youth rugby is getting better and better every year. Yeah. I think if you look at that, technically the game has developed quite a lot. Okay. If you look at the players that have left the country and played at a higher level, I mean, you look at the
more and more.
Fabian Holland playing for the All Blacks, and the way they're talking about him now is like he's one of the best things since Richie McCaw.
Yeah,
I mean that's a massive statement.
It is. That's a lot of pressure too. But
I think there's a lot of potential in this country, and I think that's where if we can unearth that, if somehow we can unlock that, what is the solution? I don't know. But I'm really keen to get involved in it and try find what that is and try to develop. And I think if you have to have that sort of mindset of, okay, how do we take this club to the next level? Mm-hmm. You need to have that. Instead of saying, are we happy with the way the Eric Klosser is? We're happy with the way we are. We're happy just being here. I think that for me, that's what I love about Eemland is that drive to say, okay, let's keep growing, let's keep building, and that's what really, really got me going. Also just looking at the history of the club, that how they're consistently going up.
And as you know, Michiel is nuts, and his ambition is to actually play in the northern France competition, right? So really. Across border, that's so it's not just the Netherlands. That's what he wants. I
think I'll stick to here first. But
I know. But that's
the mentality.
That's the long term. We're far from it. Don't get me wrong, but that is something. There's no boundaries in that respect. Yeah.
No, look, I don't think we're far from it. I think the only thing is that there's, like anything, there's going to be some tough decisions to be made and calls to be made, but that's also if you want to look at performance in sport, and that's what it's all about. That's about making those decisions and then trying to see them through.
Well, two things. We now can agree that you're going to come back after the 90 days, and you more or less had already 2 weeks, so 14 have gone. So let's make it 80 or 60. Then when you talk, so now you put your findings there. There's one other question in generic, it's the problem here in the Netherlands and also here at Eemland and every rugby club is that we lose so many youth players indeed in transition from youth towards seniors. And while I think the Dutch rugby is growing massively in the youth, that's the serious numbers indeed. But we indeed, as you said before, keeping them in the game seems to be a massive challenge. Have you any thoughts on that? I think.
Yeah, look, I think it's not only rugby; it's generally team sports that are losing a lot of athletes because obviously the ambitions of the kids, in terms of also traditional competition. I think if you look at one of the main reasons that people stop playing rugby is, am I playing with my mates?
Yeah,
coaching.
Yeah,
and
that's very important. Yeah.
So how many of those can we control? I think a competition is something that we need to, and I think that's the new board of Rugby Netherlands, and with Jose as TD, I think that's one of their priorities is to really look at the competition and, across the board to see how we can become less traditional and maybe a little bit more innovative and create something along that way. Coaching, I think that's something that we can control as a club. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that we really need to dive into is to make sure that these guys are well coached in a way that is fun, because it's club rugby at the end of the day. A lot of them, lose interest in it. But you must also think about it. Just think about a 10-month season. That's how long our season is.
It's quite long, isn't it?
It's very long. And you think about it. If you have to ask someone to be committed every weekend, if you don't have the numbers, then it becomes either more and more and more more difficult for players, because they can't really do anything else.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that if we can sort that out. But then the last thing is playing with your mates. I think it's one of the biggest things why youth stop playing rugby, because they're not playing with their mates anymore. But also going to study. There's a lot of various things there. Do I have the answer? No, I don't have the answer. But what I do know is that what we can control is how we do things here. And I think that's where, for me, trying to contribute to the values of the club and what we stand for and what our identity is, hopefully we can excite them, inspire them to want to be part of something and stay in the game. And then, even then, I think it's, if we're losing players because they don't want to play, I think it's important that we have other avenues that they can then follow to stay in the game. Whether it be coming down and helping coaching the youth, getting involved in the coaching, getting involved with refereeing. As we know, refereeing is a very, ungratifying job. People, it's not something that needs to be something that people should want to do. But let's be honest, a lot of people shy away from it. But
it's also, it's so much more complicated refereeing with rugby than a lot of other sports.
And you take so much more criticism because, everyone knows the game.
Yeah.
And then obviously you're the guy in the middle of the field or the lady in the middle of the field, and all the sort of abuse. It's a tough job. It's a mad respect for what they... Yeah. And I think it's definitely an area that we need to focus on. But
Got it. And one last one. How does it feel now to be just a guest on a podcast instead of hosting it with Het is weer Rak? It must be...
I must say, look at the setup. I think, you're definitely a better co-host than Eric van der Zande.
That's not that difficult.
Sorry, Eric. No, look, I think that's also been a fantastic journey, and definitely one that I enjoy. And I think if you can contribute to trying to get the game out there and growing the game, hopefully that is a positive one.
Absolutely.
But fantastic to be here at Eemland on the Move.
Eemland on the Move, indeed.
Yeah. And,
let's see how we're going to move things then together.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Thanks, Daan.
Gareth, see you in 60 days.
Cheers.